Well, again, welcome this afternoon. I'm Phil Boston. I'm the Dean of the University of Utah College of Social Work. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 2023 Arthur L. Beeley Lecture, which this year explores the ways nature can serve as a teacher and inspire Black communities. Before we begin event introductions, I'd like to recognize the contributions of our American Indian community members by acknowledging that this land, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. The University of Utah recognizes and respects the enduring relationship that exists between many indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. We are grateful for the territory upon which we gather today, and we respect Utah's indigenous peoples, the original stewards of this land. We respect the sovereign relationship between tribes, states, and the federal government, and we affirm the University of Utah's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities through research, education, and community outreach activities. Now, on this beautiful land, I am pleased to share a bit about this event, the College of Social Work Arthur L. Beeley Lecture, which was revived by Dean Martell Teasley in 2019 to honor the founding dean of the college, Arthur Beeley. After observing the onslaught of social issues brought on by the Great Depression in the 1930s, Dr. Beeley, a sociology and anthropology professor here at the U, understood the dire need for a professional workforce who was equipped to tackle the challenges communities were facing. Inspired by the need for change, Dr. Beeley sought help from the university and established the Graduate School of Social Work in 1937. He served as dean for its first 20 years. The school established the Arthur L. Beeley Lectures in 1961, which welcomes notable experts in the field to address current matters of concern. Today, during a time when many social issues and injustices are increasingly exacerbated, we proudly acknowledge Dr. Beeley's visionary thinking and build on the tradition he began with this lecture series in his name. Today's Arthur L. Beeley Lecture will look at how nature can be a place of purpose, healing, and respite for Black communities. I offer thanks to the College of Social Work alumnus, Charles S. Polk, who allows us to explore this important topic through his generous sponsorship of the 2023 Beeley Lecture. Thank you to those who are joining us in person today and to those who are viewing the recorded presentation at a later time. If you're here in person and have registered to earn CEU hours, please be sure to sign in and out at our check-in table in the back. And if you're viewing this recorded presentation and would like CEU hours, a link to a brief quiz will be available through our events page in the following days. Today, we are honored to welcome Rue Mapp, an awarded inspirational leader, speaker, author, public lands champion, and outdoor gear designer. This presentation will focus on Ms. Mapp's experiences in celebrating and shaping pathways towards better health and well-being for Black communities. During today's 90 minutes, first we will hear from Ms. Mapp, and following her presentation, Dr. Joanna Bettman Schaefer, one of the faculty here in the college, will join her for a conversation on ways that nature can guide us in healing. Following this conversation, Ashley Cleveland, Deputy Director of Community Outreach for the Salt Lake City Mayor's Office and former Outdoor Afro Network leader, will moderate and contribute to audience questions. Now, it's my great pleasure to welcome Ashley Cleveland, who will introduce Ms. Rapp. Ms. Cleveland is an ecologist turned city planner whose expertise and focus on equity and representation have formed her dynamic approach to seeking out opportunities to progress and evolve. She earned her undergraduate degree in environmental science and resource from California State University, Channel Islands, after which she completed a master's degree in city and metropolitan planning here at the University of Utah. In 2017, Ms. Cleveland went on to make history by becoming the first Black woman city planner in Utah, taking a position with Mill Creek. There, she launched Promise, a partnership between Mill Creek and the United Way of Salt Lake City, which was aimed at mobilizing and supporting success for youth and families. In 2021, she joined the Salt Lake City Mayor's Office as the Deputy Director of Community Outreach. Ms. Cleveland is a founding member and sits on the board of directors for Curly Me, an organization focused on families with children of color, and specifically Black girls between the ages of 5 and 14. The goal is to provide mentoring opportunities to help educate, empower, and encourage girls to be their best selves. She is also a governing board member for the Jordan River Commission, chair of the Jordan River Nature Center Facilities Committee, a division of the Outdoor Recreation IDA committee member, and was Utah's only Outdoor Afro Network leader from 2017 to 2021. We hope this presentation, along with the associated CEU opportunity, will serve you well. And today, I welcome Ms. Cleveland.
Hello. Thank you so much, Dean Osteen and the College of Social Work for having me here today. Good afternoon. I'm going to do a call and response. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Look at all the energy in the room. It's so beautiful to see your lovely faces today. As mentioned, I am Ashley Cleveland, and I work as the Deputy Director for Community Outreach for Salt Lake City Mayor's Office and Mayor Aaron Mendenhall. When I'm not at work, I'm proud to be one of Utah's Outdoor Afro Network leaders. I'm so excited to introduce our participants in today's event, our presenter and our co-facilitator. Rue Mapp, founder and CEO of Outdoor Afro, aims to lift up the natural world and those who connect with it. She is candid in discussing her personal experiences while also pioneering and shifting a new visual representation of Black individuals in the outdoors. For more than a decade, her not-for-profit organization has continued to celebrate and inspire Black connections and leadership in nature across the United States. Ms. Mapp is not only an awarded and inspirational leader, speaker, public lands champion, and outdoor gear designer. She was a National Geographic 2019 Fellow, participated in the launch of former First Lady Michelle Obama's Let's Move initiative, and a recipient of the National Wildlife Federation Communication Award. Her first national book, Snaps, Nature Swagger, Stories and Visions of Black Joy in the Outdoors, was released this past November. Fellow outdoor enthusiast, Dr. Joanna Bateman-Schaefer, is a professor and special assistant to the dean at the University of Utah's College of Social Work. As well as a licensed clinical social worker, her research focuses on wilderness therapy, the impact of nature immersive experiences on mental health, and other nature-based therapeutic interventions. She earned her master's in social work from the University of Utah, we're so lucky, and her PhD from the Smith College School for Social Work. In addition to her position here in the College of Social Work, she serves as clinical faculty in the University of Utah Department of Psychiatry and has an appointment in the Salt Lake City Veterans Affairs healthcare system. Dr. Schaefer worked as a field staff member, field therapist, director in research in wilderness therapy and residential treatment settings for troubled youth from 1994 to 2016. She has also worked as a clinical social worker in several community health agencies, the University of Utah Counseling Center, and in private practice. She is trained in disaster response and served as a social worker for the American Red Cross, response to Hurricane Katrina in Utah and Mississippi. I would just like to say you all are in for a treat. Ms. Mapp, the podium is yours.
Oh, that Ashley. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for such a generous invitation. I would just like to thank the dean also for kicking us off with just the acknowledgement of where we are, who we belong to. I also want to thank the staff and the coordinators. It's a lot of work getting me from where I live in Northern California to this moment that we get to share with each other today. So I just want to thank the staff for all their hard work and for each of you we have a team charter with Outdoor Afro, how we work together, and one of the first things is gratitude. And so again, I'm just really glad to be able to root ourselves in gratitude as well as in call and response tradition. So good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
That's what I'm talking about. Thank you. All right, so my name is Rue Mapp. I'm the founder and CEO of Outdoor Afro, and I'm going to take you all on a little journey of how I came to be the founder and CEO of Outdoor Afro. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing your questions, as well as having a chance to be in dialogue later after my talk. So it all began with little me. That's little me at my family's ranch. I had the privilege of growing up with a family that was rooted in the South. My dad was from Texas, my mom was from Louisiana, and they came in the Great Migration to California, as did many Black people from the South who got on the train and didn't get off until the train stopped and ended up in places like Chicago and New York. And in my family's case, it was the San Francisco Bay Area. And they came for, of course, greater economic opportunities, but also to get away from Jim Crow, where there were, lots of challenges just living regular life. And so I was thankful that my parents actually brought along with them that desire to have more in their lives, but also their love of the outdoors. And so my family loved the outdoors so much that my dad bought a ranch up in Lake County, California, which is about 100 miles from Oakland. And so I had this dual life of being able to grow up in the city with, lots of different peers and technology, but also I had this ranch experience. And what that meant to me was having this front row seat to generational wonder in nature. My family had this famous saying, particularly my dad. He would tell people, you have a standing invitation to come and join us in that place. And as you can see, and this is just like one snapshot, and I want you to hold this in your head because there are going to be other images you'll see later of what our work looks like today through Outdoor Afro. But this is a family picture of one of many celebrations that we were able to share in our community. And we had people from all over, like people who came from our church or people who came from areas where they didn't have access to see, the stars at night that weren't obscured by a light polluted city. And there was this feeling of not only welcoming and hospitality, but, this joy. And I, again, was able to see that it was a family affair. It wasn't just about going someplace outside of the community. It's about something that could be enjoyed in families and in our networks. I learned to hunt. I learned to fish. I was able to develop a relationship with our local creek and get familiar with riparian habitats. And I took all of those learnings and that feeling of that need to be connected to others into my Girl Scout experiences. And one of the things that happened around the time that I joined Girl Scouts was I got this diary, this Hello Kitty padded diary with all of these empty lines of possibility. And one of the first things that I wrote about in great curly cursive detail was my experience camping with the Girl Scouts. Now, my parents loved the outdoors, the outdoor lifestyle, but they were not campers or mountaineers, and they were baffled, quite frankly, about why I would want to go out and do these activities. But one of the things that I really understood was how important it was to be in a peer group of people who you shared some common ground with. And being in this Girl Scouts and this community of girls, there was all of this confidence and no distraction of the stinky boys, especially at that age. Our mindset was all about, what could we do and empower each other as Girl Scouts. And even, you know, doing chores and doing all of the different hard things, using songs and different sayings were incredibly rewarding. And so I wrote about those experiences. I wrote about those experiences as a way to not forget them. And I've continued to write over the years, especially about my nature experiences, so that I could revisit them over and over again. And so life moved on. You know, I'm definitely advancing a lot of years in this picture. By the time you see me here, I had some incredible experiences through the outdoors. I was an outward bound student where I learned the important lesson of trusting my feet. I was on this trip with a bunch of folks who I, you know, didn't really connect with, you didn't know from my local community. And I found myself like starfished on the side of this rock. And it was, you know, mandatory that I get to the top because that's where we were camping that night. And I had this moment where I felt like I was going to give up. And my instructor said these magic words that I'll never forget. He said, "Rue, trust your feet." And there was just something that happened to me out of those words where I was able to scramble up to the top. And I've been trusting my feet ever since. That lesson at the precipice of adulthood, to trust your feet, to know that what you have inside of you is what you need to get you to this next phase, is a theme that plays over and over. And it was an important way for me to understand nature as a powerful teacher. And so after that, I was hooked. I joined bike groups, and then I also turned to the early internet. And I'm going to date myself for real here. I was doing dial-up, 14.4 baud, okay, to get to the World Wide Web Usenet groups. And this was all text, okay? And if you wanted a picture, you could load one and then go do a small activity like go and get some water, go to the bathroom, and hope that the picture was loaded when you came back. So, but I was searching, right? I was searching for my people. I wanted to get involved with different outdoor groups, and I wanted to diversify the experiences that I had in the outdoors. And I was successful at finding groups, but I found over and over that oftentimes those groups did not adequately prepare me for what the experience would be. Like hard for somebody might be easy for another, and vice versa. It wasn't clear like what gear to get, like what I really needed, how to fuel my body in preparation for events. I mean, there were so many things that you just need to know in order to have a successful experience in the outdoors. And then of course, I didn't see enough people who looked like me. And I knew the lessons, the joys, the experiences I had informed my life greatly. And I wanted more people with my background to have those same experiences. So I had gotten married, had 3 children, continued to use the outdoors as a wonderful option for affordable vacation and connection with my family. And unfortunately, I became divorced and decided to go back to school in my mid-30s to complete an unfinished undergraduate degree at the University of California, Berkeley. So this is the photograph where you see me and all my kids at college. And we were thankful for the family housing that made that, 30,000 pupil school feel like a very small institution with tons of support. But what was really unique about this time was that I was in classrooms with people who were much younger than I was. So I'm 35, average classmate 18 through 21. People thinking about their lives in terms of possibility. And there was this wonderful kind of intersection of technology and social media that had already taken root on campuses. And it was called Facebook. So Facebook was actually only available if you had a .edu mailing address or MIL or military mailing address. It was not something that your grandma could get on at that time. Twitter was brand spanking new. In fact, early Twitter users such as myself would do what's called tweet ups, where we would actually go in person to meet people we followed on Twitter. So it was also just this moment, and people were flocking off of MySpace to get on Facebook because Facebook was the new hot thing. And so it was a really important time for me to understand social technology as a way to connect with other people. And I was able to get onto that technology ahead of a lot of the peers I had who were my age, who were out in the professional world. And so it was at the end of this education that I was looking at basically the economy falling apart in 2009. And nobody cared about UC Berkeley grads or anything. And big motivation for going to school was to try and secure my family's future and provide for my children. And so I was thinking about going to business school. I had previously started a business with my former husband, and I had a mentor. And I hope everybody in this room has a mentor like this, or that you become a mentor like this for someone else. But she knew that to pack up my children and go to another state for grad school was going to be hard. I needed the support system of my local community just in the undergrad. And she was like, let's just cut to it. If time and money were not an issue, what would you be doing? And I opened my mouth and my life fell out. So I'd probably start a website to reconnect Black people to the outdoors. And it literally took us both by surprise. It was like a key that fit perfectly into a lock. Sometimes the thing that you're supposed to be doing is hiding out in plain sight. The thing that you think you should be doing, is hard and oh my God, but that was with me always as a child. Connections to community, connecting to nature, technology, and really thinking about the ways that using all of those things together could be a conduit for transformation, as it had been for me. So literally 2 weeks after that conversation, Outdoor Afro was born. Okay, like no focus group, no. It's like, what do you think about this name? It was just me saying, I'm going to call it Outdoor Afro. I'm going to go grab this Google template. I'm going to find somebody on Fiverr to help me with a logo, and I'm just going to get on here and talk about the story of my heart and all the experiences. And my very first blog was how did an Oakland girl like me come to love getting her camp on anyway. And no sooner than I started writing, by this time, social media had expanded, blogs were still a thing, and there was a lot of engagement with blogs. And I recognized from the comments that I was receiving that I wasn't just telling my story, I was telling the story of a lot of people. But unfortunately, that story was not shown in the glossy magazines of the day, of Black people in the outdoors as strong, beautiful, and free. Nobody was seeing that. But I knew that was true from my family experience. And then people started sharing with me their stories, their photographs, their videos. And I realized we had a visual representation problem. And I thought a lot about the power of visual representation because I had focused my studies at UC Berkeley on the history of art. We use images throughout time to tell a story. So let us know how things are going, what the technology is, what are, some of the most pressing issues, or how we want, to connect with people in a way that transcends literacy, right? We can think about the frescoes of the New Testament, for instance, in chapels. So visual representation is very important. And so recognizing this problem, I set out deliberately to tell a new narrative using imagery, and pushed out that imagery and that story to tell that new narrative. And that's part of what we're going to do together today. One of the demographics out of this particular kind of sharing that was visible for the very first time in a broader outdoor conversation were Black women. Black women specifically through the ages of 25 and 44. They were just not seen at all in outdoor representation. It was all about children. Let's get the children and have these transformational experiences, with them. But it had no regard for their caregivers. Like, who does that child go home to? Who gets to decide, like, if they're gonna do it or not? Who's gonna drive them? And on and on and on. And so this particular woman actually has a lot of agency to, create and sustain outdoor experiences, not just for her, but for her family. And one of the things that people let me know after doing the blog for a couple of years, they're like, this is great. We love talking about it, but I want to find people to actually get outside and do things with. And so let's just locate ourselves for a moment, like what that meant in 2010, 2011. People were not converting action from digital experiences. In fact, the environmental outdoor world were really reluctant to embrace social media out of a belief that screen time was going to be in conflict with real lived experiences in nature. And I was saying, no, my very first presentation, I show a picture, a screen grab of me saying that I wanted to go to the farmer's market one day and I wanted to go for a hike after. Slide 2 shows me at the farmer's market and hiking, and then in a llama too, which was totally random. But there was an audible gasp in the room when I showed that second slide. And so there was not a lot of, and that was just over 10 years ago. So I just want to recognize how far we've come in using digital tools. That's may seem for people in this room as just the way it's always been, but it's been a really fast, even though initially reluctant, adaptation for how we connect with people in real life experiences. And so one of the things that happened out of getting people into outdoor experiences was this visibility of various partners. I could put like 20 or more logos of early partners who were local, regional, state, national. Got a first invitation out of the blue from the Obama White House to be there to sign. I was shocked. I thought it was junk mail because it came through email, and I was like, this can't be serious that you want me to come to the White House and you just send an email, because I just thought it was, but I started reading it. I was like, these are my people. This is about conservation. And so I'm reading it, and I find myself there at the White House meeting President Obama, watching him sign the historic America's Great Outdoors initiative. And that really launched, for me, the career of Outdoor Afro. And there are people I met at that time that I've continued to, I call them my second wave of lifelong friends, who continue to advise on Outdoor Afro and have really been the wind at my back. But I took a lot of time to learn from a lot of people, learn from a lot of different ways folks were getting people outdoors. And as I got people out, and this is me, early Outdoor Afro, so I was the only Outdoor Afro leader. And, this is like mainly my friends and family. And this is what we tell new leaders, like, get your friends and family out first. That's a very forgiving group, first of all, who will trust you. And also, you get a chance to learn about, what people need. And again, like the core value in getting people outside was one, inform, but really, it was about hospitality. It wasn't about me being the expert at all the different outdoor recreation skills or have the equipment, but it was about holding that place of hospitality and then partnering for capacity where you need it. So in this particular instance, I partnered with the local kayak group that provided kayaks and some instruction. And then I was really holding the space of welcoming and helping people feel really good about doing that experience. And those are the values that have really been constant that we've shared broadly with our Outdoor Afro leadership team, who began about a year or so after I did these trips and learned enough. I was like, okay, I've got a lot of great information about the outdoor industry, about the environmental education field. More people than me need to have this knowledge. And so almost, like in a kind of discipleship fashion, I was like, who wants to be an Outdoor Afro leader? And about 11 people said, yeah, I'll be an Outdoor Afro leader. And so I brought them up to a ranch not far from where I grew up. And we had our very first in-person training, and we talked about risk management, trip planning and logistics. We also talked about the importance of policy, using our voice and helping to educate others about the voice they have. We talked about interpretation, telling stories, whose stories get told and which ones do not. Social media, on and on and on. And this group of people, the bond they create recognizing that they're not the only ones who love the outdoors, has fostered some really incredible friendships and has even catapulted people into doing a number of things professionally in the outdoor field. I'm just going to run through quickly some slides, just how we've grown. And in a time when vanity metrics are so important, we've got, 1,000 volunteers, we've got 10,000 volunteers. It was so important for us to go slow and learn and make sure we really, felt grounded in what we were teaching people and having some proof of concept. And so it wasn't until we've been doing this for a few years that I decided to, double the team and, double it again. And I was doing this, out of my own dime in those early years. This was, funded, through a job I had as a program officer that was also very instructive in helping me understand the need to get funds into the community to help people get outside. But it wasn't until 2015 that we actually stood up our own 501c3. And you can see immediately that capacity lift, just how we're able to further professionalize this group, take so much of what we've learned, really lift people up in the community to be teachers, given that there's been so much experience by this point. And so we just continue to grow and meet in person once a year with ongoing opportunities for learning in smaller groups. And this is our last in-person meeting before COVID. But we kept it lit. I mean, I was so impressed because we were digital natives. It wasn't hard to stand up a digital presence because people were already engaged with us that way. And so we didn't have to learn the tools of the day in order to stay in touch with people. And people were doing virtual hikes. I had done some things, some curriculum development with PBS that we were able to launch, and so much more. And the demand for our work, it absolutely surged as everybody recognized, being the animals we are, how much we needed nature for our healing and our need to connect. And then we had our first in-person training again last year. So very much looking forward to our training that's going to happen in just a few weeks in the Pacific Northwest to bring a group of a similar size together again. And I wanted to share with you next a video that really allows you to hear more from the Outdoor Afro leader perspective of what that experience is. And I will step aside and allow y'all to enjoy that for a few minutes.
Get y'all to come in. Act like you love each other. Come on now. Oh, that's awesome.
Outdoor Afro is a national nonprofit organization that focuses on creating and fostering opportunities for Black leadership in the outdoors.
This is the Outdoor Afro Leadership Team Training and Summit, and it's a chance for Outdoor Afro leaders from around the country to learn what it takes to be a successful Outdoor Afro leader.
Outdoor Afro is important to me because the outdoor space is transformative.
One of the biggest issues in the outdoors is access and representation and inclusion. And I think a lot of Black people struggle with getting outside and feeling included when we get there.
So at this training, we have lectures on risk management, demonstration hikes, meditation as a way to weave mindfulness.
You have access through these leaders to all of this knowledge, and it really creates a safer space for you to feel like, I do belong in the outdoors. And yes, we do. One of the most important things that we focus on in Outdoor Afro is creating a sense of community. And it's not even a sense of community, you actually have that, you're a part of that. And I knew it when I left the leadership training, and I wanted to share that and bring that back to New Mexico. Zion's like, let's get all the way on the edge. Oh God. You get to know new people, and by the end, when you close it, you feel like you've known them forever, and you want to see them again. You want to go outside and play. Like that's Outdoor Afro.
You say Afro, outdoor, Afro, outdoor, Afro. You say outdoor, you say Afro.
I find so much power in being a leader, and it just instills so much confidence. But at the same time, it's okay to be vulnerable in our communities and just kind of sharing our struggles, but growing together too. And it doesn't stop at the outdoors. It's so much more than that.
Outdoor Afro has become for so many people that place where you feel nurtured and affirmed, and you get to be all the parts of who you are. Because we all need connection, and that's what Outdoor Afro is. It lets people know that they're all right, and specifically, they're all right in nature.
Thank you. Leandra's been amazing. That's one of the things I've really appreciated about the Leadership Network is that it has I mean, at first it was all about the visual representation, as I mentioned before. But I realized we're cultivating leadership. And these people who do Outdoor Afro leadership have gone on to do amazing things. And I can't take credit for Ashley and all her amazingness, but we want to be the wind at people's backs to create bigger change in their community and help through Outdoor Afro convene more people in this conversation of getting more people into the outdoors. And just to go back to this slide as I fumble a bit to get you the slide view again, the leaders also do their own capstone experiences. This group of people actually went and did a 40-mile section hike of the Appalachian Trail in the footsteps of Harriet Tubman. Really inspiring. And then we also had a group a couple of years later actually go to Tanzania and climb Mount Kilimanjaro and really redefine what summit looks like, what summit needs to be, because we've got these traditions in the traditional like outdoor kind of climbing culture about bagging the mountain, and a summit being at the, geographical topmost point of a mountain. But there were several people who recognized their summit experience could have happened anywhere along their journey, and that people were actually in relationship with that mountain, in relationship with the culture that's and the wildlife and the natural world that sustains that mountain. And so we really have been thankful to reframe in a way that lets more people into the possibility of being successful and really engaging more deeply with outdoor experiences. All right, this is gonna bug me if I don't get this thing off the top. Let's see if I can get it full screen. Always after videos, it's weird.
It looks great.
All right, I'm not gonna let myself, all right, yeah, this is me, okay, this is what I do. I myself had a chance in 2014 to get back into that capital W wilderness myself after several years. I found myself in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge with some great friends from the Sierra Club. The Brooks Range is what you see behind us. And we landed and began to set up camp, and we had a visitor. And I'll tell you, I was afraid, like really afraid, like knees knocking afraid. And we tried to do all the things that humans like to do with charismatic megafauna, like negotiate, you don't want to be here, bear. Go away, bear. Bear was, I'll never forget, like it wasn't like a national park bear, that knows how to like break into your car and your cooler. This bear probably hadn't seen humans ever. So it was genuinely curious about us. And after, maybe 30 seconds and just, took a whiff of the Arctic air, just disappeared. And I realized that, that bear could have enjoyed us as takeout that day. And we not being at the top of the food chain. We were in its wild. We were in its home. And this was, for me, a very hard reset on my humanity, in that we always feel like it's about us. We're all at cause. We can do it, change it. Yes, we have a lot of influence indeed over this wild, our policies to protect this wild so that this bear and other creatures in this habitat can sustain. But I knew after this encounter and being in that wild that I was a better human, or I knew that I had the potential to be. And how can I take these lessons, importantly, and bring them back to my home in Oakland, where people would not have the privilege of going to the Arctic refuge like I did. And this is the Scraper Bike King. This is a local group that helps folks learn skills on bicycle maintenance and outdoor and this is their wild. This is where they live. But there were a lot of commonalities between the two. I found in each environment. There was housing scarcity and pressure, belonging, also food scarcity. And so if we can do better, I feel, to take some of these big conservation and environmental topics and help communities understand the relevancy to their own lives, their own daily lives, I believe we can get more people involved in these conversations and ultimately to act. I've learned a lot in this journey. It's not just my family that had a connection to the outdoors. Black people have been connecting to the outdoors in ways that have not always been televised, or again, not always in the glossy magazines of the day. There has been structured classwork in universities. There are so many communities that have stood up their own outdoor recreation areas. We've got Oaks Bluff and Martha's Vineyard, Lincoln Hills in Colorado, Lake Ivanhoe, the list goes on and on and on, where Black people chose outdoor recreation and not just chose places to go, but they actually were operators of inns, of outfitters, they were instructors, and altogether contributors to an outdoor economy, as we hear about more and more these days, as we know it. And so it's been important for me to recognize that asset-based history, and that is the shoulders that I believe our work has the chance to stand on. But we also have to talk about the bad things. There were absolutely, and around the same time, people being harmed in the cover of night. We can turn to the plaintive lyrics of Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit that talks about blood on the leaves and blood on the root, which is why we still have elders, a living generation of memory, who know that and warn us, their younger relatives, be careful. Oh, you don't want to go there. Who all's going to be there? So that is still with us today, and is why we have to work hard to not only change the narrative, but also step into what the wide possibilities we have today that simply did not exist at a time not too long ago. So back in, 2015, 16, as you may recall, there was tons of eruptions in cities all over the United States in response to police-involved violence. And I live, born, raised, Oakland, California, and we were bracing in that community after yet another amplification and awareness on social media of a Black man dying. And I just, hear in my local community as I left, the helicopters were overhead, people tap, tap, tap plywood on the cover of their buildings. And I asked myself, I'm like, what do I do as a Black woman leading a Black focused organization, encouraging people to get outside? What's my call to do right now? And the answer came to me plain as day. It was, you do nature, Rue. That is your lane. And that weekend, I brought together some local partners and participants, and we did our very first healing hike. And we got into that meadow and circled up and then moved onto that trail, and we were moving down in the Redwood Bowl, which are unique to that region. And we were hiking along a stream. And I realized that we were doing what Black people have always known we could do, and that is to lay down our burdens down by the riverside. And that was the moment that I recognized nature as a healer. And we have continued to lean into nature many more times for many more reasons in our small groups. And it's part of how we train our Outdoor Afro leaders to simply hold space for healing and allow people to be and allow people to lay it down. And it's been really powerful. We also have, the other reality of Black children who are drowning at 5 times, sometimes 6 times the rate of white children ages 5 through 19. And this is our inheritance of Jim Crow policies that excluded Black people from public pools, from beaches. We've all heard the story of child falls in the pool, caregiver jumps in, maybe another caregiver jumps in, everybody drowns. So this is a multi-generational crisis that we face. And I was a part of a fellowship that was focused on an initiative called Plastics for Planet. And I was like, I can't start here if we know people are having trouble in the water. And so in 2019, we decided as Outdoor Afro that we were going to teach every child in our sphere of influence and their caregiver how to swim. So if any of y'all don't know how to swim, let me know, okay? Because I can't be up here talking about it. And we absolutely are thrilled to have given hundreds of swimmerships to providers that allow people to take the kind of lesson they want, that's close to home. And we're looking forward to scaling that program out even more now that we're kind of emerging from a pandemic and shorter staffed era. And again, this is about knowing that if a child doesn't know how to swim, they're not going to ease into a tippy kayak. They're not going to, put a pole in a lazy lake, and they're not going to care about plastic in the ocean. And so people need it. We need to save lives, but our planet needs it. And there's so much fear, whether it be about our drinking water or just, exploring places where there is water, that we have the opportunity to make a difference. And so it's also important for us to see nature. There's a lot of groups out here getting out, we're hiking, we're just traipsing through, but we do take the time to make sure that people are, identifying birds, identifying habitat, identifying, everything around them, okay? Because we're not just here to consume, we're here to actually be in relationship with nature. And to be in relationship with anything, you gotta get to know it. And so we weave environmental and conservation ethic into everything that we do. And we're multi-generational. I mean, back to what I was saying before, this movement of getting people connected to nature has overly focused on just taking the kid from the hood to the woods, and there's a whole universe of connectivity that child has with his local community, with their caregiver, who decide on whether or not we can continue to do this thing. And we have really helped people just feel confident in getting outside, knowing that outdoor experiences can be a part of your toolbox. Yeah, you can still go to the amusement park. Yeah, you can still, do any number of things, but you can also do a local experience in nature, often very close to home. And we'll help you with the confidence, meaning where do I park? How much water to bring? So that you can do these things on your own without us. We're also really thankful for the ways we've been able to lean into policy. As y'all heard earlier, we kind of launched Outdoor Afro in a policy framework. And so we've kept that drumbeat going and really helped educate not only our own communities about policies that affect the environment, but also sharing with our legislators that yes, Black people care about laws that protect the environment. Our voting record shows this time and again. And so it's been really rewarding to bring together Outdoor Afro volunteer leaders at least once a year, and oftentimes when there's special opportunities to engage with their local policymakers on the Hill. And of course, during the pandemic, we did it virtually. And it's just been a wonderful way to help what I call Outdoor Afro civics class, help people understand that they can be at cause. Their voice can be heard by their elected officials. And then in 2020, I got a call from Oprah, and I went on a hike with her. And that is so random. And I don't know how to talk about it other than it just happened. I had to keep it top secret, and I didn't even tell the people, they were all surprised. And she came down in her SUV to the trailhead. But I will say this, she's the Oprah that you all think she is, like super hugged everybody. And then she featured us the next day at her 2020 Vision Tour. So we've been really thankful that the work that we've been able to do has had this kind of visibility and impact to help attract more people to the conversation of connecting to nature and their agency to create those opportunities on their own. I also became a born again hunter, y'all. And I do wear lipstick when I go hunting, okay? So, my dad has long passed, and there were a lot of things that I wish I'd learned from him. And, hunting has, it's fraught, right, with lots of complication, but I felt it was part of my story that I wanted to make sure was told. And I also just wanted to be more responsible for how meat got to my table. So I, have really gone headlong, and I do all kinds of hunting. My favorite is duck hunting. And it's been a really incredible conduit to connect with people who are just different than me. We live increasingly in these silos, and we think that, we're the good person and over there are the bad people, right? For different reasons, for geography, for politics, religion, or whatever. And there's just something equalizing about being in a duck blind with someone for 6 or more hours. And that person's got to have your back. You got to have that person's back, meaning there can be no oops with the gun. There could be, there's a lot of safety protocol woven into hunting experiences. You got to trust the people you do that with. And I have some incredible bonds created with people who come from very different backgrounds than I do, but we're exchanging our holiday cards every year and sending text messages and building relationships that I felt were so important for me to reflect on and learn, especially after 2020, when, the whole world was erupting around the racial reckoning, and recognizing also that, when I go out in nature, the trees don't know what color I am. The flowers are going to bloom no matter what my gender is, okay? The birds will sing no matter if I've got 10 cents in my bank account or if I'm a millionaire. And so I really am thankful for the ways that nature has allowed me to learn and hopefully help us all learn how we can be with each other, using how nature views us as the human creatures we are. And, I'm back at trying to help people learn stuff again. So this feels like Outdoor Afro 2012, helping people to learn how to hunt. So I've got an annual duck club gathering that bring together mentors and people who want to learn in a group environment, recognizing, as I did before, there's just tons of barriers to the opportunity. And the more you can build in those skills, people can, have confidence to do it on their own. All right, so as we wrap up, I want to share with you just, some highlights that you may have heard about what we've learned. Relevance is everything. So it's so much about meeting people where they are. If you are a mom, if you are a busy professional, if you are someone who doesn't know much about the outdoors or have fears and perceptions about the outdoors, just meet people at that place. Don't try and dismiss it. Some people just want to, make sure they're able to have something else to do with their family. All right. It's a family bonding motivation. So meet people at their motivation. And that is something that's been proven for us time and again. Also, as I mentioned before, leadership is everything. Like, I feel like it's a little asinine that we've got to send children off to a program in order for them to connect with nature. Let's restore outdoor leadership back to the home. That's where I got it. That's where most of y'all got it. Because that's where it can happen over and over again. And not only does the child need it, but dad, mom, caregiver, grandma, everybody needs it. And often doing it in community is a source of incredible bonding as well as healing. And then finally, this work that we're all a part of is about a long view. I know that we are constrained sometimes by our grant deliveries and, the things that we feel, a lot of pressure to perform and show and improve in like a 1 to 3 year time frame. But I like to just remind some of us in the room, and there are a few of us in this room who remember that there was a time when you could smoke cigarettes everywhere. And I mean everywhere, like the bank, doctor's office, everywhere. The doctor would give you a cigarette. No, serious. Now, I know somebody who was pregnant in the 50s and they were given a cigarette to calm down by the doctor. That was a socially accepted thing to do. However, there were numerous levers and pulleys that were informed by the research that showed that this was harmful. And what we saw over time were policies, educators such as yourselves, students, PR, lots and lots of different people entering the conversation to tell all together that smoking is not good for you. And it's not good to even do it around people. And so what we see now is a whole flip from that time. You can't even smoke around a building anymore, okay? And so we think of our own work similarly in generational shifts and the way that all of you get a chance to be a part of contributing to that shift. And people ask me all the time, they're like, okay, so what does it look like when your work is done? And I'm like, well, it's actually a race to the ordinary. It's not going to be a ticker tape parade. It's not going to be hiking with Oprah. It's going to be a quiet moment where we'll all look up and see people outside recreating in proportion to their population and their opportunity. And it's no big deal. Just want to share just a few more ways you can touch in just to honor the bio that was read about me. I am a clothing designer. We have 22-piece hike collection that we were able to bring to life through REI, Recreational Equipment Incorporated. You can go online, you can go in the store, every door, and it's really meant to be size inclusive, as well as, fashion inclusive, because I don't know about y'all, but hiking clothes are ugly. Like, I don't know who invented the zip-off pant. I don't know whose size they fit. But these clothes are meant for everybody, in a wide range of sizes. And it's been something I've been really proud of, and you'll see more color of that. Y'all know that I wrote a book. So I would encourage you all to take a look. It's a book that really highlights a lot of what we talked about today. But what I love is that it's got about 30 other people who have become a part of that lifelong wave of friends, telling their stories, their nature swagger. And so I've been able to, curate this wonderful and diverse community within the Black community of what joy looks like in real time. And then you can stay in touch with me. So you can, follow Outdoor Afro across all of the platforms. You can follow me if you want to know about all the hunty stuff, go to Black Heritage Hunt. But I just always like to end with making sure that people know that you don't have to have an afro to feel a part of Outdoor Afro. That this is a conversation like a beautiful quilt. You know, we are one patch that gets to be sewn together with lots of other patches to make this conversation be something that serves everyone in our wild all around. So thank you. At this time, I would like to, am I bringing you up? Oh, Dr. Schaefer, okay. Okay, come on. Okay, awkward transition.
Awkward transition all around.
I make sure I didn't do anything wrong. Okay.
Dr. Schaefer.
Let's give it up to Dr. Schaefer. Sorry, I'm having my coming to America moment. Like, if you're a huge fan, coming to America, it's like sexy chocolate.
I'm goofy, okay?
Yes,
So you all
yes.
should know that too.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I'm really honored to be sitting next to you.
Same.
And for those of you who don't know me, I'm a professor of social work here in the College of Social Work, and do the majority of my research here looking at nature-based interventions. And so one of the things that I'm really interested to talk with you about is, and we just started to talk about this a little bit at the table, which is sort of how do we get people outdoors who haven't envisioned themselves outdoors, people whose families didn't do outdoors, people who were like, I don't even know where to go, I don't know what to wear, I don't know what to bring. How do you started to talk about it's about the invitation. Can you speak a little bit about that? How do we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we have found, and a lot of what you're talking about, we've addressed through Outdoor Afro. So these volunteer leaders, the determinants of our work is not to the leaders, but it's to the community that they can touch. And so we are helping them to create compelling invitations for people to get into the outdoors that include where are we going, you know, how can you get there, but also around themes that feel resonant to people. And one example is that, you know, people's motivation is usually they want to get out and meet other people. And they want to get out and meet other people with a shared interest, right? Sometimes we have been reframing things like a bird walk, for instance. Now, if I say, okay, we're going to do a bird walk, we will get bird people out on that walk. But there are people who would say, you know what, I'm not really into birds like that, so I don't think that that's my event. But if we say, oh, we're going to get together on a Saturday and have a stroll, and here's the potluck sign-up list, that's going to get a different group. And if in that same trip, I so happen to bring my spotting scope and binoculars and talk about the riparian habitat and talk about Lake Merritt as the oldest wildlife sanctuary in the country, the outcome is the same. And so I think we really have to rebrand. You know, sometimes we want so much people to do what we do, and then we want people to do it how we do it. And you got to meet people where they are and call things different things to open up the door as wide as possible for people to say, yeah, that's me. That's something I want to do. And you could have, like, for instance, you know, folks have asked us about, you know, health, for instance, like if you do any health walks or do you talk about health? And I have found that if we tell people we're going to go out for a fitness walk, there are a lot of people who would not come because they don't want to work. You know, these are the people we're reaching are busy working families. Let's think for a second. If you're a busy working family, you work your 9-to-5 job, your free time is limited. On the weekends, you may have to go take care of grandma, soccer practice, church, football. I mean, the list is long of things working people have to do. And so it's so important to have the right size opportunity for people to come into as well, that really honors what their lives look like today. So theme and time. And when we found enough people in the sample that we could poll those were two of the biggest reasons. Geared equipment was also a factor, as well as fears and perceptions, because, what's gonna bite me? What's gonna eat me? Will I be welcome? And if you're like me, if I get an invitation, I'm like, who else gonna be there? What's the food? And so you really have to give people a lot more information that's relevant to them if you want people to come. And then, this is helped by having people who are from that community make the invitation. And that's what the Outdoor Afro volunteers represent.
So awesome. Thank you so much. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how Outdoor Afro's trips help promote kind of nature connectedness, because one of the things that we know from research is that when people feel connected to nature, that leads pretty directly to pro-environmental behavior, which, right, like given a time of environmental crisis, we all want to facilitate pro-environmental behavior. So how does Outdoor Afro work with folks to kind of build a sense of connection to nature?
A great question. I mean, I have found that traditional conservation organizations, and I love them, and we work closely with them for a number of years, but sometimes the ask is about kind of rushing communities to the altar of conservation practice. And just like with any relationship, you got to get to know people. You got to get to know these landscapes. You got to get to know the natural world and feel, literate in it. And so a huge value for us is not, saying, okay, now you've gone on one trip, sign on this letter, with the climate crisis. Similarly, we have to build relationships between people and nature that are relevant and informed. And again, back to the conservation ethic, like identifying things, just knowing like what birds are in your neighborhood, or what flowers are blooming, or what should be blooming, or what birds you should be seeing at a certain time of the year. Like, this is such important information that you can infuse through an experiential way. And I would also offer that it usually takes more time to get people to the action part than we think. So for instance, when I see like little kids out like cleaning up cigarette butts on beaches, I'm like, was their first opportunity to come here to work? And it looks good for the newsletter. It looks like we're doing something, but man, how nice would it have been for that young person to have the touchstone of going to this place, falling in love with this place, and having the agency to want to do something about protecting that place. And so that's where we like to live in the conservation advocacy world, is through not making any shortcuts on the relationship piece, just for, the numbers. And I'm thankful that we now have been doing this for so long. We've grown up people who are showing up in greater numbers about some of these issues, but it's informed by love.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Thank you. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit, you shared a little bit about your upbringing, but specifically time at the ranch and how that kind of led to the, your interest in the Girl Scouts and your love of camping there, and then to, your later explorations into outdoors and wilderness. I'm wondering if you could talk, because I spent a number of years working in southern Utah. I know a lot of people who grew up on ranches there who don't have that same kind of respect for, reverence for kind of natural areas. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how that thread developed for you into the career that you have now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, my dad was absolutely a conservationist. Okay, I didn't grow up with knowing about John Muir or Rachel Carson or, any of the iconic, people in the traditional conservation movement. But I saw and grew up watching how my parents recycled. Like, no, baby, don't throw that jar away. That's a big jar. Or my dad doing composting, which was innovated by George Washington Carver. so many ways through a lived experience. And that's what my book, Nature Swagger, is all about. It is about really broadening the definition of what counts to be connected. And, I would offer that, from a distance point of view, sometimes we can't see it. We can't know, how people are in a lived connection with nature. We've got a lot of stereotypes about what we think other people do, what they care about. But I'll bet you, like my dad, he was never gonna probably like wave a flag about it. But he cared deeply. He loved deeply. And that love was informed by the daily experience in Nature Swagger. And the reason I called it Nature Swagger is what I hope more people can do, and that is to really understand their natural world in a way that they are able to have their life be informed in a nature balanced way in everything they do. And so it's a really interesting conversation about what counts, who's doing it right. I mean, there's a very wide spectrum. And I'm thankful for the ways that my dad showed me, even though he's never accepted my book, he's not going to be in the books of conservation, I think, leadership.
Thank you. I'm gonna pass it to Ashley to bring in some questions from the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mapp. Thank you, Dr. Schaefer, for your engaging discussion. Let's begin with some questions from the audience. Please raise your hand and I'll just bring the mic right on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming to Salt Lake and bringing your wisdom. Yeah, I just love the way you use language and have learned a great deal today. And I'm going to ask a question if you want to answer it. If not, let us know. But the National Audubon Society announced yesterday that they're keeping the name, John James Audubon. And, there's a lot of controversy around that, given that, he was a very complicated human, to put it kindly. So if you would care to share what your thoughts are around that, I would love.
Yeah, you nailed it. Complicated, right? And this is, if you think about it, it's a continuum of what this country has been wrestling with. Those monuments, for instance. From a personal perspective, I feel like we've got to take the time to educate people. I think, we get caught up in the iconic moment, and we're missing opportunities to learn, And so I personally, speaking on behalf of only me, I am very interested in doing what we can to educate versus erase. And what's interesting about John James Audubon, he was like part Black. His mama was Black. Like, it's so complicated. And some people don't even know that, right? So I really am interested in how this organization unpacks this over time. I am also thrilled that there are lots of other organizations. See, I've been of a mindset that I'm not trying to change these old organizations. I want to create new ones or support new ones. And I think those organizations have a particular demographic. They have a demographic that's also aging. And so I'm really enthusiastic about the future that we get to create from this point going forward. But I do believe these are huge educational opportunities. And I'm afraid that if we erase things without first taking time to learn and learn so it doesn't happen again, we might be missing something important. That's just me. Don't come calling Audubon saying, Rue said, y'all should, whatever.
Hi. So you had mentioned you have experience in the Girl Scouts and Outward Bound. And here in Utah, as I'm sure Dr. Schaefer is well aware, we have a lot of wilderness therapy companies that work with youth and adolescents and adults to help heal past trauma and wounds that they have. And so I'm wondering if your groups have ever had opportunities to go and teach culturally competent leadership skills to these organizations in Utah.
That's a great question. We get, I mean, right now, diversity, equity, inclusion is so hot on the block. It's been that way for a while, that we do get a lot of folks who ask us, you know, can you come, can you help us, you know, do this? And I'm really glad that today there's a lot of incredible groups that can do the cultural competency piece. The way we kind of, you know, gone down the path of DEI, if you will, is we believe that, you know, by having multi-generational experiences that include, say, a caregiver who knows what to do with her daughter's hair when it gets wet, and all these other things, right? By having multi-generational experiences, it doesn't burden disproportionately staff for having to know all the things about a cultural need, background, whatever. But I think, you know, what this all boils down to, and what people I think are not as willing to do or recognize the time needed to do it, is to really get to know people and build trust. Like you can do as many DEI trainings, cultural competency trainings you want, but that does not always equal trust. You know, so I always ask, like, how are you showing up in their community? Like, are you meeting people in their needs before asking them to come and participate in your club, initiative, or whatever? And so I'm a bit pragmatic about these things, you know, because I just think we need to just rush to building relationships and trust. And when you do that, it doesn't matter what your background is, you can really connect with people across difference. But it takes more time than I think people are willing. There's no like 1, 2, 3, you do these things and you're gonna be culturally competent. You're gonna have diversity in your group. No, authenticity still reigns supreme.
I also want to just thank you. I appreciate the way that you frame things, especially the race towards the ordinary. And that got me thinking, I was wondering if you could expound a little bit. I was just wondering, in the course of your entire journey with Outdoor Afro, what has been the biggest obstacle that you've faced? And also, is there a singular achievement or culminating achievement that you're most proud of?
Oh, that's such a great question. And a squishy question, because there's been moments, right, where I've been like, oh my God, this is the biggest thing possible. And then there's something else that happens, you know? But I would say, like, one challenge is been, and it's like, it's a hidden challenge, is being taken seriously as a leader. People still want to categorize me in ways that are not aligned with what I'm actually doing. And so it's been a kind of a tandem part of my work to professionalize it, and also to create opportunities for other people to have employment and career pathways through this work. There are a lot of influencers out, for instance, people who have a lot of followers, have a lot of things they want to talk about. But I like to make sure that people understand, like, I have a board. We have a paid staff of 12 who get real livable wages and have health insurance. And I mean, it's a thing, y'all. And so oftentimes I'm, just like cocktail hour, like, so how do you really make a living room? And the reason why is because there aren't a lot of examples out there of, we know, like, you go to school to be a doctor, you're gonna be a doctor. You know, if you're gonna, go to school for law, you're gonna be a lawyer. But for what I do, there hasn't been like a very clear track for how to be this way and to run an organization that's professional. So that's been a challenge, I think, is to really change perceptions about what a professional organization looks like around this versus being a social media influencer, which I'm not at all. I mean, I would want to be. I think that it has a role, a very important one, but it makes me feel like success when people, like I have one staff person just last week, whose bank called, because they're about to buy a house. They want to verify employment. And like moments like that to me feel like real success, not just, thinky thoughts and talks that are important, but real impact that makes difference in people's lives.
Again, thank you so much for being here, and I hope you will tolerate what might be a meandering thought before I get to my question. So I want to go back to the land acknowledgement statement that we read in the beginning that talked about caretakers of the land. And I first want to say acknowledging an issue is not the same as taking action on an issue. And I think that's important for us to recognize. So when I think about the very violent history of this country that made it seem as if you could own things, as if you could own divine things like people and land. You then started to speak early on about Black people and nature feeling free. I just wondered if there was more thought you could share with us about, is there a connection between those concepts, or how do we acknowledge that these things can't be owned no matter how hard we try?
Yeah, I don't know if I can answer that question. I think, this is part of the journey of life, right? And discovery. But I do know that, as I mentioned before, like in the dark times of what it meant to be Black in this country, we still turned to nature. And we still connected it with the divine. And we still valued it so much that we invested in making those experiences happen. And so I think it's important for me in the work I do to be as specific as possible. In a time where we got to talk about everything all the time and at the same time, it's hard, and that's why this work I do has been focused specifically on the Black American experience versus, minority experience, or what's now fashionable, the BIPOC experience. Because specificity, when you really face it and look at the challenges as well as the opportunities and something really specific, it's actually universal. I'll give you an example. I can tell you that I'd like you to come and have some ice cream with me in my town. And you're like, okay, that sounds fun. I like ice cream. But if I say, let's meet on Saturday at 12 noon at Fenton's Ice Cream and get like Rocky Road and maybe we'll get a crab sandwich. Whoa, that's a really specific, there's like a charge that's ran up immediately in hearing that, because we're talking about something really specific. And so in a time when, again, we feel a lot of pressure and even expectations to talk about all the things all the time, sometimes you gotta just take a tiny step back and talk about what we know, and talk about, really specific things. And that I feel has been helpful in my work in talking about Outdoor Afro and how I socialize Outdoor Afro, and also how I invite people in to Outdoor Afro. They can see that, okay, this is an experience that I feel very connected to. I know exactly where it is on a map. I know my proximity to it or my distance to it. But that, to kind of get to the bigger that you're talking about is the pathway that I choose. And you're right, talking about it ain't being about it. And I really want to invite more people to find your specificity and be about it.
I would like to come back to more questions, but I also would like to ask a question. Would you guys mind if I ask a question?
It's getting deep.
I know. So I've been an Outdoor Afro leader here for going on 6 years. I'm not the only one. We have another in Park City. His name is Sandy. He's great. Speaking of specificity, sorry. being Black in Utah, being Black and outdoors in Utah, being Black and connected to nature in Utah. When you first founded this organization and you made the step to opening the conversation nationwide, what were you like most surprised about in hearing from each of your network leaders about what it's like being Black in their state, in their region, right? Because I see some outdoors Afros in here right now. You know, when we talk about snowboarding, we talk about what the Foothills Trail System means. It's very a specific thing. So what's something that's been really, really, I don't know, eye-opening for you from your national regions?
Thank you for mentioning that part of the work because to the, the whole thread of specificity, I know that like the Black experience is not a monolith in this country. That if you're from the South, if you're from LA, if you're from the Pacific Northwest, if you're from DC, you're still Black, but your vernacular might be different. The places you might go, or have available to you to go, the time of year you can go is going to look a lot different from place to place. And so this is why it was so important to have people who knew exactly, they knew their environment, and they also importantly had a connection to community. And what I think is also important to recognize that our volunteers who we train, they come in through an application process and we train them, they come from all kinds of professional backgrounds too. I mean, we literally have the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. I mean, we've got real estate professionals, firemen, military vets, preschool teachers, human rights attorneys. I mean, people who are accomplished, just like you, Ashley, all over the country. And they're able to stream in their profession, they have kids, so they're able to stream in their values and perspectives through their lived, experience in a local area where we know that on hikes, people are not just only talking about the birds and the fauna, they're talking about where to go get my hair done or who's serving the best soul food or whatever. There's relationship building. I keep going back to that because it's so important. And what I found to be just so heartening is how well that's worked. It was an idea, like, yes, we need to have more people around the country who can do this work, but it works. And one thing that also works is making sure that we're in communities where there is a population. That's why I say specifically in proportion to their population and opportunity. If you're in the middle of South Dakota and complaining about diversity, like Black people not even living there. So we have people actually in communities where there are Black people. And that's why we're not going to be, driving toward being in all 50 states. We've tried in some remote areas to have people, but it's so hard to gain momentum in places where, there's a few people and they live 100 miles apart, and so we want, people like Ashley to be successful. But if you look at like a heat map of like where Black people live in the United States, we're there. And we're there like how we need to be there. That really honors the local opportunities and the needs of the local community.
Thank you so much. One more question? We have time for one more question.
Hi, Rue.
Hi.
So we've talked a lot about nature as a sort of healing element for the human. I'm a student here at the U of Environmental Humanities graduate program, and I'm doing research on, I guess, the language used in outdoor recreation, education, therapeutic programming, and this perception of nature as a sort of resource, which to an extent it is. But I'm wondering about what opportunities you found or successes you found in framing nature as inherently part of human living, or humans rather a part of nature, and what successes you've had in framing it that way in your programs and organization.
I love that question. One of the things that got real crystal clear to me during the pandemic, because everybody was feeling, that was a buzzkill, y'all. Like on so many different levels, right? And Just glad we made it. But, you know, we were feeling really disconnected. People were really feeling constrained about places to go. And I looked out of my kitchen window and I saw my lazy pit bull Lulu just passed in December. So sad. She was like in the back scratching her back. We had blue scrub jay flitting from limb to limb. And I realized, I was like, yeah, they're doing that today after we've been told to be locked down. And they did it the day before, and they'll probably do it again tomorrow. And I recognize that nature never closes. And even further, you know, people were trying to find that connection, getting out in nature. Trails had never been so popping, okay? Like everybody was hiking. And I also realized that nature is not someplace over there, but nature is us. Like if you think about our bodies with so much, you know, of it comprised of water and governed by the lunar cycle, we are nature. So nature is not over there. Nature is us and is always at hand. So that's my breakthrough on that. And it's also a way for people to not feel bereft. That some people get access to nature and other people don't. We all are nature.
Thank you all so much for your questions and your time. Ms. Mapp, I think we've all come away from this experience feeling so invigorated by you. Thank you for blessing us with your presence. Really appreciate it. DLC, I'll give the time over to you.
Thank you so much. And Rue, I just want to thank you. I think I probably could speak for everyone in this room, and that this was a really special moment. And I'm grateful that you made space in your life to come and share that with us. So thank you for that very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And to Joanna and to Ashley, we're so grateful for your time to help us enjoy and engage in the spirits even more. So I want to thank you again. I also want to thank Charlie Pohl, whose generous donation helped carry off the Arthur Beeley Lecture for this year. I want to thank each of you for joining us here today in person, because you created space here as well for us to be in fellowship and relationship. So thank you for that and for your questions. If you're registered for CEU hours, please make sure that you check out so that you get credit for those on your way out. And for those again of you who are watching the recording, make sure that you check on our website for the quiz for CEUs. The College of Social Work is dedicated to this annual lecture as part of our effort to explore and broaden understanding of issues facing Black communities. We welcome you to join us throughout the academic year as we delve into many more interesting topics. Please visit our events page at the college for more information on all of our events. Again, thank you to our guests and to our attendees, and I hope you have a blessed afternoon.
Thank you.